everybody, and welcome to an Apple a Day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. So if you can, pull up a seat, chair, and get comfortable, because this week we will be talking about the weekly theme of addiction and recovery. And so again, remember that the show is a place where people can share their stories to help other people overcome or have strategies wherever they're at. So again, I am really glad to have Jeremiah Ryer, and I've actually known Jeremiah from my high school, which is amazing, and get to see him quite a bit. You know, we are Facebook friends and really know that he shared some of his stories. So I figured why not have him come on here and share with you. So Jeremiah is celebrating 11 years, that was just recently, of recovering addiction. And so I'm really, really so grateful to have him on the show. So again, welcome, Jeremiah.
Hello. How you doing, Amanda?
I'm doing well. So it's so really, truly great to have you on here. And congratulations again. So I wanted to talk to you about addiction and recovery. And so I just wanted to start with asking you, in your opinion, or what you've gone through, what is addiction?
I've had a counselor or two tell me some pretty good explanations of addiction. Best thing that I've heard was that addiction is an obsessive and compulsive behavior that limits your freedom. Knowing that it's partially mental, and then there's a physical state that come together and take away your ability to make choice.
Thank you. And again, you know, you're hearing that from the counselor. And would you agree that that captures what you think addiction is, Jeremiah, based on what you've been through?
Yeah. What people, I think, see is the physical part. Most of the time, we end up watching people. Well, let me clarify this. When I say I'm an addict, I'm talking about me being a sinner. I don't actively use drugs anymore. I haven't touched a drug in a while, and I have no urges to. However, there are things that I know that limit my freedom, and all of them could bring me back easily to being a drug addict. But in the meantime, it puts me in the sinful place. So I say that I'm an addict, and I'm also calling myself a sinner at the same time. And in that, all of us, I think, can relate that there are things that are mental, that are thoughts in our head, that are desires that grab us and want to pull us to a place where we want to do things that aren't good for us, even though they feel good to us, you know. Uh, and when we do that consistently, we form patterns, and that's what addiction starts looking like. Like, it looks like a pattern of escape. We're thinking that we're getting free, but we're going deeper and deeper into a prison. And then once you get in there, you got guilt and shame that keeps you in, and you go deeper and deeper, kind of. So what they say, I've definitely learned is to be true.
Well, thank you. And you really brought that to a deeper level for sure, you know, talking about our mind, right? And our patterns, and that, and there's not any human being, right, that cannot relate to possibly, right, encountering some type of addiction, whatever that may be, right? Success or work or, you know, drugs, alcohol, whatever your choice of addiction is, right? Or getting out of it and, you know, making those choices. And you said about patterns, right? And even internally what's going on. So I think you really, you know, added a lot of what addiction is. And I think that is exactly it. You know, those behavior patterns that happen over time. And then you, like you said, almost getting into a prison and trying to figure out how do I get myself out, right? I started with something small, right? We made one little thing, and then all of a sudden it kind of, right, almost a domino effect. And so absolutely. So those of you in the audience, you may be in, right, some of these patterns, or again, struggling to overcome. We all are in a different journey. And I'm really hoping that you can hear, you know, what Jeremiah has to say. It's really good in terms of being real, right? And also understanding that you're not alone. And whatever you're going through, you know, we're rooting for you. And we're hoping that as you're hearing this, or maybe you have a family member that's struggling with addiction, right? Or it's something that you're ashamed of, because Jeremiah, you brought up shame and guilt. And I think that's a big way that we kind of get stuck right in that hamster wheel, where it's like it's just shame and guilt and wondering who's gonna not judge me, right? Who's not gonna judge me for what I'm going through. What was one addiction that you overcame?
Well, yeah. When drugs, I mean drugs, alcohol. I gave up cigarettes now, so my clean date for cigarettes is 9 years.
Wow,
On
congrats.
the same day of my clean date for drugs. So I got 9 years clean of cigarettes. And I mean, and I just being able to control your choices
Mhm.
is a freedom.
Mhm.
So when I start, for me, the biggest thing you would have seen from me 11 years ago was that was a drug addict. You would
Mhm.
have noticed it. It was blatant. Nobody could deny that it was destroying my life. However, today, I'm sure there's things you can dig into my closet that I'm not going to put out there. However, that you would look at and you would say, "Hey, that's not as blatant, but that's definitely problematic."
Mhm.
And those things still tend to go with addiction. I had a counselor, she had 30 something years clean, and she says to me, I still to this day have to watch and control how I spend my money. I'm addictive, and I walk into a store and I see a shirt, and it's a blue one, there's a pink one, and there's an orange one and a green one, and I want all of them. I
Mhm.
can't afford all of them, but I want all of them. You know, and she said, and then I find myself walking out with all of them. you
And that's
know,
yeah.
we're trying to grab habits to be able to actually make choices with our mind to the point where we're in control of our life.
Mhm. And that's really good. And I think I like how you said, even 37 years later, so you're free, right? There's that liberty to stay free, but it also is, you're also aware of it, right? So you have freedom, but you also in that freedom know, right? Like I continue to keep thinking and as I change my mindset, right, I continue to grow and be free of it, but I also have to be aware, right, that those are some things that had been in my past, right? Or some things that could, if I'm not aware of it, right, like kind of just being like knowing, for example, like for her, okay, I see these shirts, right, that's something I love, so you kind of know what could be a possible trigger. Is that kind of what you're alluding to as well?
Well, yeah. You start being honest with yourself. I mean, some things you're not going to win all overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I have a struggle with food. Me and food go back and forth. That was my first, probably what you would call addiction. I've loved food since I was little. I've struggled with being the obese kid, and I've got myself to the point where I liked it, and I've exercised, and I've starved, and I've done all the little diets I could figure out. And to me, that showed my addiction, my addictive pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Like didn't do it, and there's a right way to do things. Like nothing wrong with food. Nothing wrong with drugs. The doctor gives you drugs, you take them. You read the back of a label as far as cough syrup and things like that go, and they have a purpose. When you use them towards the purpose, then it's not a problem. When you use them outside of the purpose is when you start finding addictions and problematic behavior come in. And that's basically what we're trying to be honest about with ourselves. Like, is am I using it within its purpose? Money's good, but jobs are good. But am I overworking? Am I overspending? you
Yeah.
know,
hmm And that's a good point because again, addiction can look differently for every person, and there could be many, right? Not just one. Like you said, okay, there's food, or then something else, and so it could be something that seems like it's okay, but it's subtle, right? How it comes, like whether you're addicted to work, right, or success, or something that pretty much can overpower you, right? You can't lay it down at the moment, right? Like it's something that you're like, whoa, and you kind of get into. And then again, like you said, I think it's a day by day, it's first admitting it and it's first, being able to get help. And I think I'm just curious, Jeremiah, when everybody else could be, you said earlier, and I didn't pick up that pointer and talk about it earlier, but you mentioned, 11 years ago, everybody else knew that you had an addiction and it was pretty blatant. But did you, like, could you admit that or no, or were you, or not?
yes, I knew I had a problem. I was in and out of rehabs. I went to 17 rehabs in 9 years, so I used very hard for 9 years. Hard stuff. I mean, I've been using drugs and playing around since I was like 12, 13.
Mhm.
But about 22, I picked up some hard stuff, and at that point, I was stuck,
Mhm.
and I knew that I had a problem after the first time I couldn't stop,
Mhm.
but I didn't know what it would take to get away from it,
Mhm.
or because I actually went to rehabs and they told me what it would take. I wasn't ready to do what they told
Mhm.
me. Because there's the two parts of that.
Yeah.
The first part is actually admitting that you have a problem. The second part is admitting how big the problem
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think Jeremiah, you pick up a good point. Sometimes we can admit the problem, or maybe we don't get there. That's the first step, admitting the problem. But then the second step, I don't know if you agree, is that you actually, your heart, your mind, and right, you're ready. Like your mind, your will, and emotions are like, I have to. This is a big problem, like you said, that second step, and I need help. Right, I can't do this alone. I want to get the help, right? I want to get the counseling, because sometimes we can push it back, right? Like, because really, I don't know if you've seen this, or I'm curious for patterns, but a lot of times that, if we don't want to deal with the root of it, right? We keep the addiction kind of covers up the actual, right, bigger
Yeah.
issues like internally. And so all we're doing is running from ourselves.
Right. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's running from ourselves, and then we finally stop. And I don't know if you agree that a lot of times with addiction, a lot of people do, but it's scary then, because sometimes you can get in a place where, yes, you're over that addiction, but there's still other ones, or it's still too scary to face yourself. Do you think there's truth to that?
Well, yeah, that's where you'll find a lot of times people come in and they'll be I did NA, so I'm an NA guy, but there's AA and I've done all of those different programs. But you'll see people come in desperate, hurting, painful, want to get clean. And I don't doubt that their desire to want to get clean is not there. However, what getting clean entails is then stepping outside of your comfort zone and going somewhere else. You have to become somebody different. And who knows what that person's going to look like when you're done? Will that person still be able to relate to his old friends? Will
Mm-hmm.
that person be able to do the same job? I used to want to be a rapper and and music industry and can I go in the clubs now? And
Yeah.
I don't for me personally, I don't. But and I just got offered to go do some shows and stuff, and I said, no, listen, it's not for me now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to know myself. you
Yeah.
know
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is that one proverb, know thyself. I keep that in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But before you know who you're going to become, it's a blank slate,
Mm-hmm.
and you can be hopeful and it can become scary you know
Yeah, I appreciate that, your honesty, and I really like how you talked about, being willing to face yourself. And you picked up a big point, because I think what you're really alluding to, Jeremiah, which is, I think, actually the root of all all addiction, and really anything, but underlying it is the identity, right? Who am I? And I think that happens anywhere. And really, again, depending, and I know we'll get into other questions, but sometimes that can be because I don't know if you'll agree, and we'll talk about this, family lines. So a lot of our family didn't know who we were, right? Or there were traumas that happened. And then that, I think, that pain of trauma, whatever that looks like, and how we perceived it, or how we experienced that, actually does, I think, at an early age, break our identity. I think a big part of why we see so many people with addiction today is because we have a lot of traumas or things that have happened, and it caused a lot of pain, and no one's really been able to walk people through that. And I don't know if you agree with any of that, but I've just kind of noticed a lot of this stuff with identity. And when we go to these other things, a lot of times, like you said, like, once I have this identity, right, like in some area, and I have all these friends, who am I outside of that? Right. Because that's all I've ever known, or that's all I've ever thought I was.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing people want to know about you is what do you do nowadays?
Mm.
What's your job? We identify who we are with our job. Now I know if you're a person that tries, or if you're not. And that's not the way it is. You might be a person that works really hard, but if you say to me, hey, I'm 30, 40 years old and I work at McDonald's, I go, well, what's wrong with
Mm.
them? In my head, and if I was the guy that's working at McDonald's, and I have been, I go, well, what's wrong with me? Identity is huge. What I've learned, and I'm gonna tell you a lot of what I've learned, because
Yeah.
I'm not the creator of the ideas. I'm just the guy that can pass them through. Okay, is that humility is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And what happens is you'll find people who are insecure trying to look really strong and act like they're in control of things, and that looks super aggressive usually, or you'll find that they look really weak, and so you'll find them going back and forth. So as you said to me, when you were out there, did you know you were an addict? And I could say honestly, yes, I knew I had a problem.
Mhm.
But some days, you know, my insecurity looked like super prideful,
Mhm.
and I don't need nobody to help me. I can get through this. If you knew what I got through yesterday just to stay alive today, then you'll know that I can get rid of this by myself.
Mhm.
And some days it looked like me crying and asking for somebody to help me. But if you pick what day that is, it wasn't consistent because I didn't have an identity. So one day, I knew who I was. I knew I was the scared person inside, but I had to put on the front. And
Mhm.
if you came to me with any good information, I may take some of it, and tomorrow I may not be listening to you. You know.
Mhm. Well, thank you. I think that's raw and that's real in terms of, one day, like you said, I didn't know who I was. Like one day I was like tough and I had this exterior, right? No matter what, that I'll get through it. Another day I'm crying, right? Seeking help. But between that world, right, of okay, like can I have that humility? Can I get to a place, but I feel like, I don't know if you agree, like when you're in between those identities, a lot of the underlying part of not getting help or having that frontal, that exterior is a lot of shame, don't you think? Like a lot of times shame prevents us from actually getting help.
Yeah, yeah. There's a whole "what's wrong with me" thing that goes with it, and at least for me, I was a foster kid. So originally my mom gave me up for foster care. That started it. That starts to what's wrong with me. Why doesn't my family even want me?
Mhm.
Why am I not good enough for my dad to come back and stay clean? Then I come around to getting back with my real mother, and she's got a couple of issues, and I watch it and I go, well, why am I not good enough for her to get her life together? And
Mhm.
so some of my drive to stay clean, really honestly, me sitting around was thinking about my kids, and I thought one
Mhm.
day they're gonna look back and think, well, why wasn't I good enough? And I
Mhm.
said, I'm gonna use that as a motivation. So I talked a lot about my kids when I was in the programs, because I said I'm gonna get back to them so they know that they're worth it to me. Whatever it took. Now it took a bunch of times of me getting up and falling and getting up and falling, but I kept going back for the help. Funny thing is, I could say that God carried me the last time because I gave up.
Mhm.
It's weird when people ask about how to stay clean,
Mhm.
especially in something like drugs. Or it's you can't give a formula because I don't know what you're going through.
Yeah.
I don't know where I can give you some people who have some experience with it, and I can tell you how you stay clean. Don't take one drug one day at a time. That's what they taught me. If you don't do that, you can get clean. And that's on any kind of addiction. Whatever it is, don't do it one day at a time, and you'll get through it. And one day you'll look back and go, wow, I got 11 years, you
Mhm.
know. But the process of all this and dealing and coping with yourself, these are things that you got to have some help with, from somebody who knows how to do it.
Well, thank you. That was really powerful. First of all, that you were able to, first talk about during that, you really went back to your childhood, right? And what happened. And that really, right, is part of that trauma that you experienced, which could be hard when you're like, no one wants me, like, what's wrong with me? Right. And that's what trauma does. It says, what's wrong with me? And it's not true. Like what happened to you, right? You had something really sad, right, happen to you, like, your mom, like, okay, like what's wrong with me that I have to be given away, right, for whatever reasons. And then you got reunited, but you still, again, were, processing even with your mom, like some of things that was going on with her. But what I really also appreciate was that you spoke about your own children, right? In your mess, right? That was the addiction, which we all have messes, right? It's not like we all have to overcome something. But in that addiction part, like what kept you, right? One of your motivators was you're like, I don't want to be having my kids ask what I did, right? I don't want to have my kids saying, what was wrong with me that dad, right? Like kind of continued in that. And I think that's really powerful because what you did was you realized I have a choice, even if I keep falling, like you said, I have a choice to either, persevere and like do something different, right, than what happened in my life, or perhaps, any generational part. And even though it was hard, and you said, like, by the grace of God, he helped you and he has a way of doing that, right? When we're at rock bottom, he's like, hey, here I am. Like, I've always been here waiting for you. So just, say you need help. Like, I'm not going to shame you. I'm not judging. I love you. Like, I'll help you. And I think that's amazing. But again, I think what was powerful is that you had your kids, right? And that's that father's heart that you have, and that God was kind of developing in you, and he was showing you that's his father heart too, right? He wants you to know there's nothing wrong with you, right? Like that you're my kid, like come back. So I think like that's the beautiful story about it, is that, in that, even though there's pain, you got to know that there's something bigger, right, than you. And like your kids were a motivator, and then obviously your faith like later was something that brought you through it. But I thought that was really powerful, so I
I
appreciate it.
my last day using, I I uh I found I'm gonna say I was suicidal. So, and I didn't know what to do. I committed a crime. I pretty much went crazy. Committed a couple of crimes, basically just bent off of like losing it. But before I lost it that way, I sat I sat in this little alley and I was thinking about how I could off myself, and I realized that I don't even have the strength to off myself. This is what
Mhm.
went through my head. I said, you know what? I'll jump off a bridge, and what'll happen is I'll break a whole bunch of bones and I won't die. That's my luck, right? I was so hopeless and I didn't think I had the luck enough to kill myself,
Wow.
right?
Okay. Well, luckily, and fortunately for all of us that you're here, that
Well,
was, yeah.
but it was a moment that I needed. And you stated about the hope. My and I said it and seeing my kids and who I could become.
Mhm.
Before I got to the point of seeing who I could become, I had to get to the rock bottom of my hopelessness.
Hmm.
And when I kept using and running in and out of programs and using, I what really happened was I didn't think that I could be clean anymore. So now it went from me having a choice between whether I want to use or not to the point where my mind was like, you know what, you're going to use anyway.
Mm.
And at that point, desperation kicks in, right?
Yeah.
So I had to move past that hopelessness into the point of hope. And
Mm.
gratefully, and this is where I say God placed me, I got arrested. And when I got arrested, I got put into the cell, and I was now I was suicidal, so they put me in a suicide cell. This nurse comes and she wants to feed me pills, and she was kind of like my angel at the point in time because I had no hope left. And she said, "There's a lady that's in this place that has 33 years clean that helps addicts. Sign up to go see her."
Mm.
And so I went and seen her, and then as I go into that program, I watched other guys helping the newer guys coming in. So
Yeah.
the guys who had been there for 6 and 8 months were helping the guys, and this is in prison. We're
Yeah.
helping the guys that came in for their first 2 or 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and I witnessed, the heart of these people to want to help because they had a little bit of sanity now, and they wanted to reach back and help somebody else get some sanity. And that hope allowed me to start dreaming of who I could become. Now, when I started dreaming of who I could become, that's motivation.
Mhm.
Because if you don't see a direction, somebody told me when God took Abraham up on the mountain, and he took them, he said, or Moses, it was Moses, he took him up. No, it was Abraham. Sorry. He was telling them where he was going to go. And he said, look to the east, look to the north, look to the west, look to the south. And he said, anything you can see, you can have.
Mhm.
He said, what you can see, you can have. And I had heard a sermon once, and that touched me, and it related to me because as long as I couldn't see it, I couldn't have it.
Mhm.
And people want to tell you how you should live. And if I
Mhm.
see that's desperation and hopelessness, then that's basically what I'm going to get. So I needed somebody to be able to show me that there was actual hope. A guy with 6 months was a lot for me back then. How'd you get 6 months?
Mhm.
Guy with 2 years, a lot. How you get 6 months? Now I got a guy that just graduated or celebrated. My buddy, he just celebrated 32 years.
Wow.
And I go, how did you get 32 years? Because it's the hope. I can look at him and I can say, well, I relate to you, and and that could be me,
Yeah.
you know. And so hopefully, they told me I'm supposed to show up. I'm not anybody, but you asked me to do the interview, and I said, they told me that I only keep it if I give it away. I can only keep it if I give it away. So my job is to tell my experience so that somebody else might look back and say, hey, that could be me. Because I was one of the low ones. I was at the bottom. I was homeless. I didn't have nothing to show for it. I drive truck now. I have a career. I have my family and
Mhm.
my kids in my life every day. And
It's
you
amazing,
know,
and that's powerful. And I really loved how, again, I asked these questions, but I'm glad that you're able to go to those deeper places to talk about some of these experiences. Sorry, sneezed. Um, I'll just have to take this out. I'm like totally sneezing. But what I really loved was you talking about, okay, I was at my bottom part, but you lost all hope. However, oh my gosh. I'm gonna stop sneezing at some point. Sorry. All right. So you lost all your hope and you were hopeless, but you said you basically had to get there. And I love how you talked about even in that there's a lady, right? And you called her your angel, but somebody, and I believe God always puts people in our lives, right? Where like you didn't have hope, you're in jail, like you're in this thing, you're like, why not just I'm done? And how she encouraged you. And then you signed up for this program and you saw, like you said, just in your first day, and your first day was somebody else's first day, right? Or somebody who may be watching this and this is going to be their first day. And what you did was gave like you got hope from somebody 6 months out, and you said, like, I love how you said it, I didn't have the hope for experience, like I didn't see who I could become. You're only in seeing where you were, right? And what that there was no hope out. And I think so many people get stuck in that, right? Because you want something different and you never see it, right? It's almost like when your heart grows weary because you think, okay, I guess because it's been so long, I'm never going to change or nothing's going to shift in my life, right? And so you get to that place where you're like, well, this is it. And I think that happens a lot of us, right? A lot of people. And what I loved is that in that you saw somebody 6 months out and you're like, oh my gosh. And then 2 years. And then, you have friends that are 32 years. And even you today, 11 years, people, right? You would be that person in that prison cell saying, how is that possible? And I think like just in that story, first of all, that you had hope and that started your journey. And I love how you're sharing now, because that's exactly it, right? Freely we receive, freely we can give. So as we get freed from something, we are to share our story. And I know you're, person of faith, but it's like, it's like we know Jesus because of what he did for us, but then we share our story, what he did for us, right? Because we couldn't be where we're going without him. And what I love is that, you were in those places, and see, God doesn't care. Like he can reach us in a prison. He can reach us, when you're like trying to like jump off a bridge and you think I'm not going to make, that's not even going to work. I think that's what I love about him, is that he's not afraid of going in our darkness, right? He's not afraid to find us and get us, sit in us with us in that to get us out of it, And I think that's right. I mean, like, but that's who he is, because he's like, he can come in and bring his light to get the darkness repels it, like it doesn't like it. But once we realize there's something different, right, we kind of already shifted. We're like, okay, like there's something better for me. And I think that's really powerful, and like hope for anybody, like your story, just from, okay, like I had nothing, right, to now look at me and my family, right? Like I've overcome these things, and like your story shifted, and I love that you said it shifted with hope. And I'm just hoping, again, anybody in the audience, if you are struggling, we love you. And again, in different ways than in Jeremiah, you talked about different addictions, and you may be relating to Jeremiah, but just know that addiction at its root, there's just different patterns and there's pain points underneath it, and you're loved. And perhaps, I know I had a week on suicide, but if you are at that place of hopelessness, I will be, listing a number. We love you. I pray that you get hope, because if you're hearing from Jeremiah, he was there and was able to become who he is today. And I know that might not seem like possible, right? You might be like, that is not possible, like there's no hope. But again, we're here able to hear his story, and hopefully something reaches your heart today. So Jeremiah, I know you talked a lot about addiction and some of the pain, but is there anything else that was really painful in your addiction?
Uh, the painful, the most painful parts of my addiction just were where we're missing my kids. I'm telling you, when I you never grow up and want to be elusive, you know. So when I was out there, I always said I would be different than my parents, and missing my kids was my biggest thing. That's also around not being successful, and being poor, and all because I'm choosing it, but just and things that you see, the people that I'm around. I remember sitting in rooms and think, wow, I can't believe I'm here. See, I've always had like a vision. I don't know if God blessed me with the ability to see, but I'd be the guy that they kicked out, because I'd be like, you know what, now I'm about to lose everything. And I'd be talking depressive, and they'd go, well, why are you getting hot? Get out of here.
Yeah.
you know
Mhm.
um but that and the consequences are a big part. I did 4 years in prison. They gave me, when I first went in, the numbers they told me was that I should have did 55 years, I believe.
Mm.
That was the sentence that was what the weight of my charges held.
Okay.
So I didn't know anything about court systems or anything, but I go in and I do this preliminary hearing with this judge, and she says this charge should be 10 to 20, this charge should be 10 to 20, and this charge should be 5 to 10.
Wow.
And I start doing the numbers, and I go, wow, I should be going away forever.
Wow.
You know,
A lot of grace, a lot of God's grace, right? He had better plans for you. Even in that, he knows who you are. I think. If you agree.
right? Well, I needed to be where I was at.
Yeah.
Because sometimes he says, you go through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
This is not all prairies and
Mhm.
and sunshine.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to get walked, and it's cold and it hurts. To get to the light parts,
Mhm.
because I want to talk about. There was a day that I had an awakening, and I was in prison,
Yeah.
and I was reading and I was studying and I was trying to change my life and um and I was doing all my programs and things, but I was praying every day and I was meditating, and I came out one day and I woke up and I had tingling in me and I was happy.
Mhm.
I mean, utterly happy. I'm in prison, but I had like a joy because I knew that it was going to be okay. Like that day, I really knew that God was in control of everything.
Yeah.
So no matter what happened, it was okay.
Mhm.
And then I could let go.
Mhm.
Um, I, Basically, the way I just brought you through was steps, and it was the first step of being powerless. The second step was finding hope. The
Mhm.
third step was to turn my will and my life over to God as I understood Him.
Mhm.
And at that point, when I got to the point of being able to turn my will and my life over to God, it was just an understanding that my life was already in God's hands anyway,
Mhm.
and all I had to do was to align my will to the things that He would want from me,
Mhm.
and my life would change.
Yeah.
And that sounded easy enough. Although I've backslidden and moved forward since then,
Yeah.
in that moment, it sounded like the breath of fresh air that I needed.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's amazing. And I think that, yeah, and he gives that, right? He knows what we need at that moment, that joy, right? Instead of despair. So that's something that he does, right? The brokenhearted, or when we're in pain, like he trades us and exchanges us more. So we give him all of our pain, and it's amazing because he gives us so much good, right? Even in it. So we go through hard stuff. But again, what we come out, I think, on the other side, like that refinement, you know what I mean? People can look and like it's really impossible without him, right? I mean, honestly, sometimes people are like, oh, like you can do things. And yes, but like honestly, without him, there's no way, right? There's no way you can get from like being this like, in the depths to there. I mean, he does it even if we don't recognize it, right? But I just think it's amazing that you had that encounter and you knew it would be okay, and that he has you, and all you and I love that you said aligning your will, because sometimes we have great things, right, that are happening, but still there could be even more if we just align to what he has, right? But it's the process, right? That process of us getting there and saying, yeah, your way's better, this seems okay, but there's something better on the other side of me just being stubborn, right? Or me like thinking like, let me think the way you think about me, right? Or let me think about what you think about my future. And I think that takes time, right? Like you said, and we fall or we make mistakes, and God knows, right? We're all kids. So that's what I love about him, is he knows, like, that we're, he knows. So I think that's really important. And thanks for sharing about your kids, because again, that can be painful, as your big pain point. And then I know you sort of mentioned it, but I'm not sure maybe if it was just the people in prison, but did you have any support of people while you were going through this addiction and recovery, and or perhaps during this time?
yeah. Well, so AA actually has it, and they said I got to a point where I realized that I couldn't heal myself, that there was no human power that could heal me, but that God could and would if He was sought. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you that I had depended on people in the wrong way before. So I had girlfriends that I had given all my money to. So I said, I'm gonna give you all my check and you hold it. I don't be responsible for it, and that way I don't use.
Mhm.
Right. So I took the responsibility off myself and tried to put it all on her. And then, usually I would come back, give me my money, I want my money back.
Yeah.
Um but I was looking for some kind of human, lock me up, put me away, take me away from it, and take the control or the choice out of my hands. Um So yes, I had finally figured out how to use the support in the right way, and I saw it. So I said that God couldn't would if we saw it, right? And I think that's where the power came in. I sought my recovery. I actually went to people and I asked for help, but not in a way of trying to give up my responsibility,
Mhm.
in a way that I could learn how to be more responsible.
Yeah.
And these people were my counselors that were in the prison. I had I would talk to the pastor. I went into the church. I joined the choir just to be around the people, and there was a lot of guys that were studying the Bible, so we go
Yeah.
study the Bible together. Um, I had my family that I could call and talk to. The few that still took my phone calls, and I would talk to them about what I was learning, and
Mhm.
then I started listening to their stories, and realized they were doing the same stuff almost naturally.
Mhm.
So when I'd be on the phone with my girlfriend at the time, and she'd be telling me about how she was going through this and this, but she talked to her mom. And I say, well, she was using her support system. And I noticed that, what normal people, whatever quote unquote normal people
Yeah.
were doing was the same thing that they were training me to do, but I didn't get trained to do before.
Mhm.
Um, so I had a lot of support. And basically I use anything that makes sense. Books. I read the NA books, I read the Bible, but I mean I've also reached into reading and studying all types of stuff. Anything that had to do with me being able to be okay with, at peace with my world and myself, you know, as it is. I wanted to clarify, because it always sounds good to reach for the blessing. My name's Jeremiah, and there's a guy in the Bible named Jeremiah who was prophet of Lamentations. And this guy argued with God about why that the bad people seem like they get so much.
Yeah.
And these are the questions as an addict that I had. I hated the world. I was
Mhm.
mad. Does my life look like this and somebody else's life look like that? And these are the questions I had. And I realized that God told this guy not to get a wife. He said, "Don't get a wife." He said, "Don't make too many friends." He
Yeah.
says, "You're gonna live through a time that's painful." He said, "Your blessing is going to be your life.
Mhm.
You will live through it."
Mhm.
And to me, that is crazy, because we nowadays we
Yeah.
talk about blessings like you're gonna get the car and the house and the wife
Yeah.
and that is not the blessing. He
Yeah.
said you will have life,
Yeah.
you know. And so I made my decision to follow Jesus
Yeah.
through this process of wanting to have freedom, real freedom.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I said no matter what. So it wasn't so much if I had a job, if they close the shop down and I don't have the job anymore, that's not gonna make me use.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back to running for myself and my responsibilities anymore. If I work my butt off and I try to build something and it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
it's okay. God's still in control, and I'm still not going to go and run for myself or you. You know,
Yeah.
and that had to be that way, because in the beginning, when you're getting clean, especially, you don't know if you're going to keep the girlfriend.
Mhm.
She's wishy-washy. She already, you already messed up a lot of bridges that way. You don't know if the mom is going to come back and be okay with what you did. And some of these things break people. You
Yeah.
say, you go back and you say, okay, I got clean now. Here I am. And they go, no, I don't want to be with you anymore.
Mhm.
Do you fall for that? Because that doesn't seem like the blessing to you. To me, I thought I did all this for the blessing to get that back. And
Mhm.
God says, no, I got something better for you. That's
Mhm.
not the plan. Just wait. you know.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. And I really love, and he does like through Jeremiah, and he right, like Lamentations, right? There's that one line in there, there's all this stuff. And it's like, okay, right. God has mercy and compassion, right? And he is, and I think like one of the bigger things that he reminded me of the other day, so that's why when you said that, it really stuck out, was love is long suffering, right? God is the greatest love, right? But he's long suffering in that none of us perish, right? That none of us, right? He wants to see us all. Like he's the greatest love of our life, really. And that's what he was doing with you, right? And that's hard for like us to always get, but like he was like what he was saying to you, which I think he says to all of us, and that's where we have to get to, is my plans are wonderful. Like, are you going to agree with it? Right. And what does that look like? If I take everything away, right? And I've been through there too, so I can totally get you. But if I take everything away, am I enough? And that lesson will come up again and again, right? We have everything, we think everything's aligned, and God's like, if that all comes away, am I always enough, right? Even if you had that or you lose that, am I, the eye of Apple, am I your sole devotion, your sole affection? Like, am I enough? And I think that's what really happens. And that's what you're talking about, where even Jeremiah or other people, and sometimes our story looks different than other people, right? Like sometimes it looks different, in our lives we're waiting, right? And God's like, but there's something better, but he's just working out our heart, to align with him and to do what's right, right? So that we are not going back to that stuff. Or if we do, then he's like, okay, like there is something better, but are you going to like give it to me and let go, right? Let go of what you think is good so I can give you what's best, right? And I love that, because a lot of times we think, oh, it's not fair. And that's just, I think, where God, and you brought up Jeremiah, is maturing us, right? He's maturing us and emotionally, right? To know that he's good, even if, right, even in the hardest stuff. And that can be hard, because life is not, like you said, there's, we overcome, we go through the valleys, we go through the hard stuff, and we know him better then, right? We have a history with him because we can trust him. But I think that's a great point, that you brought up. And I just love that, because yeah, it really is that giving up what we think of our lives, and then he does, later there's might look different, but if he told us ahead of time, we might not believe him, right? Or we might end up messing it up because we're trying to get there, but he's trying to have us go through a journey to get to who we need to be for it.
Right,
Good.
right. And that person is going to be useful to him and bear fruit, and that's what's important.
Mhm.
um you know, I had $1 million dreams, and now and now I don't have such big dreams,
Mhm.
but my hope is that the people around me are happy, and and I hope that I can be a part of the process, and that's a big difference in the way I used to think to now.
Mhm.
To serve myself and to be a servant is a whole different thing. When you're a servant,
Yeah.
you really don't get to have a lot of rest.
Yeah. Well, and there is servant, and then just remember that sometimes there was Joseph in the prison, and he had to learn all right years and years, that decades before he became the king. So just know
Right,
that a lot of times God's
right,
teaching his servant leadership is the best leadership, right? Because it's like, God has great plans for you. He gave you Jeremiah. So it's like, there is good stuff coming, even if you're in this moment, right, of learning. And that's where our hearts then are in a place where when we have that stuff, we won't forget, right? Like, or we're in a good
right.
place. So I feel like, he brings us to those places. And I think that's great that you're in a place where, okay, like I'm serving, right? And I'm impacting people. So that's good. And then I guess in terms of anything else, I know you talked about coping systems. I guess one thing you did mention, but I'm just curious. Do you think that addiction can be part of family lines, like generational patterns? So like maybe say from your family, your parents, like their parents, like do you think that is possible that addiction can come through families?
I do. Funny thing, I have stepsons, and I watch them, and their mom says, I don't know how, but they have the same types of patterns as their dad. Their dad had passed away. But and they didn't know him that well. So it wasn't like, they grew up with him and copied habits.
Mm-hmm.
But genetically, they have the same type of thinking. She says it's funny to watch, just like his dad. Um, I do believe that there are things that are deeper than what we can see with our eye. I think that um I called myself bipolar. I told you my mom had some issues, so she was what they were calling bipolar. So then when I moved back with her, I was acting bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I came to find out that I don't take any medicine or anything for it now. I came to find out that I was reacting to her. So what she did, I was doing the dance. And it would look bipolarish to when I started talking to other people about what I was.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, when I finally got cleaned up and found out my true identity, I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I'm not bipolar. I'm not even depressive.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I was influenced, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that family has a big effect on who you are, who you're becoming, and it's hard to break some of those things because some things go so deep.
Mm-hmm.
We The Bible calls them curses. And I read and I thought, well, now I was praying God to break curses in my life because my whole family pattern is kind of dysfunctional if I can go back far enough.
Yeah.
And now I'm in my house and I look at my kids and I tell them, I say, this was what we had going on in our family, but this is who I plan on us becoming. So from here on, I'm hoping. See, my mom came back and got me from foster care.
Mhm,
If there was nothing else she did right,
mhm,
I always think that to me that was the most powerful thing. She came back. So when I was out there, I thought to myself, I can come back. Some
mhm.
people didn't see their mom come back and they might have went out there and they don't know that they can come back. But
Yeah,
for me, I had a family member that I could look at and I said, if she can come back, I can come back. But if she came back a little okay, then I can come back even better because now I know what she did wrong. At least in my opinion. So now I can change that and do it a little bit better. And I look at my kids and I say, and I expect you guys to go out and do it a little bit better than I'm doing it. Hopefully you don't ever go out as far as I went. And this time you can influence the rest of, my grandkids and their grandkids and your influence will bring light to the world. I can always tell them they're light and salt.
yeah.
And I
Hey,
said,
that's
your
good.
job, my job is to put the light into you and send you out there so that you spread the light and salt.
Yes, yeah, you're speaking that life, and I agree. Yeah, like breaking those, you're a generational pattern breaker, right? So you're speaking blessing over your family and your life, which is big, right? Our words mean so much. So I totally agree with you. So I appreciate you sharing what you believe, happen with family patterns. And actually, in fact, family patterns are the big thing, like in a triangle, even above our adverse childhood experiences, whether they seem somewhat smaller or bigger. Until each person has to overcome those. And sometimes people don't think they have them. So then it's like there, but they don't realize there's more. And I think all of us kind of think, is there more? And there is. So as it breaks, we get breaking free and we keep moving forward. So I think that's powerful. And then I guess like just in terms of any other, I know you talked about supports for any resources. I know you said the Bible, you read books, but is there any like resources or anything you think would be helpful to people that are going through addiction or that recovery process?
Yes, I'm fully a 12 stepper. Um, I think that anybody who's trying to begin the process of staying clean would benefit heavily from going to a NA, AA, RA, whatever they have, SA and all of it. Whatever program that has a good 12-step program, I believe that they work and that they're very powerful. Um, but if you're in the midst of using, then going to a detox,
Mhm.
going to a rehab. Um, some of those places are intimidating. You go in and get the best that you can get out of it. You look for what you can take at that moment to stay clean.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a lot of resources out there for people right now. But people don't use them unless you know they're put there a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's rare to see people just walking off the street into a NA meeting without having to sign a paper anymore. Um, but I have friends and family and people who I know who are out there, and I say the most powerful tool I had was the big book and the blue book in NA,
Yeah.
AA.
That's great. Well,
People who knew,
sorry, go ahead.
people who knew what who knew what the experience of was what it was like getting high and what it was like trying to get clean, you know.
Yeah.
But not limited to. Sometimes it's good to listen to your mama, your girlfriend, and whoever else is a little bit half sane outside of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Those are no, that's good though. That's good words of wisdom, that again, you had those sources like, the word of God and also the NA, the steps, and then also the support people you had. And then Jeremiah, if there's somebody listening, and again, maybe you can put yourself in your shoes of when you were at your hopeless, what would you say? Like, what's one word or phrase or one tip you would say to the person? Are you there? Sorry, I think you're
Yeah.
frozen. Okay, there you are. What is so just thinking about your, at the bottom, rock bottom, if someone's listening or again, they have and they are tuning in, what is one word, phrase, or one tip you would give them that you would want somebody to tell you, or you would tell them your old self where you are now?
Keep it simple. They say cat kiss, KISS is the saying that they say. Keep it simple, stupid. Um, realizing that you don't know everything. That's why they say the stupid part on there, right? You gotta remind yourself, if I was smart, I wouldn't be here. because we get into programs and we want to tell everybody how we're going to make our own program, and they're telling you how to do it. And I don't think the programs have any different power. Like, there's different sets of programs. People, you go to different places, they'll tell you different things. They have different ways. One person wakes up and they say pray in the morning. One person wakes up and say to clean. And I don't think that any of those things have any power in and of themselves. But I do think that being obedient and learning how to humble yourself to listen to the program is important. So keeping it simple is super important. When you walk into the place, be ready to do whatever they tell you to do. You know, when you go for your help and you say, "Hey, let help." Oh, that's the saying. Let help help you.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you. I appreciate all of your wisdom today. People listening in, you really went to the depths of, sharing your story, even some of the things beyond addiction, which is important, right? Where did that start? And so hopefully anyone on here, again, audience, please like, share, subscribe. I hopefully you got lots of wisdom. I really appreciate it, Jeremiah, your story, and thanks for your vulnerability. And again, anybody out there, if you need help, please reach out. You are worth it. You are amazing. You're incredible. And we're rooting for you. So thanks again, Jeremiah. And everybody else, have a great day. And we'll see you next.
Thank you, Linda.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.